What's up, my dudes? Valk here. And today, instead of making my own tier list and being original and giving my original thoughts, I have actually talked with Fat Nugget and the other guys that made the tier list in the Discord, and this is it. And I actually agree with a lot of their takes. Anything I disagree with, I will move around, but I do agree with a lot of what basically they put on here and their placements. So I'm just going to use their tier list, and anything, like I said, I disagree with, I will talk about whenever I actually get to it. So first off, meta overall, Broly, I completely agree. I think Broly, Goober Stomps, basically infinites, raids. If you have a really built-up Broly, then he just beats everything. The only issue with Broly is he's kind of whale only, because you have to have a Bulma that basically lets you get to expensive money values very, very, very quickly. And that, I've always been against that. I don't like that Broly is whale only. So I've been very vocal against that, and I think things need to change with Broly. That way he's more accessible to the average player and not just for whales. That's like my only beef. But if we're considering them at their current power level and what they can be used for, yeah, I do agree that Broly is still the best unit in the game. Next up, Raid/CR meta, Guts, Nonomy, and then Madara. So first off, Guts, I feel like I don't need to talk about it too much. You guys have seen me reach, what, 100 and something million? 101 million in Challenge Rift using Guts. Guts is absolutely insane. He's just, the amount of damage he can get out in short form content, but Guts is very snowbally. The positive for Guts is he has the highest damage in the game. Whoopsie doopsie. The positive is he has the highest damage in the game. The negative is the second he is not one-shotting stuff, you have lost the match. The enemy is going to push into you, and he is going to stun your team, and you are going to lose. That is Guts. That is what he does, and that's why he's so strong, because he needs to be able to be one-shotting enemies. He is a perfect kit for short-form content. So he is the short-form content king because of the amount of damage he can put out on the field. But however, like I said, the second he's not one-shotting stuff, you are going to lose. Just straight up, you will lose. Next up is Nonomy. This is going to shock a lot of people. But ever since I made my videos on Nonomy, and Nonomy got spread around, and people started testing Nonomy, they all kind of came to the same conclusion I did, that Nonomy's broken as hell. If you manage to get a double Hawkeye Nonomy, you will probably Goober Stomp your way through Challenge Rift up to, I believe, like CR 150. I think you can clear with just double Hawkeye Nonomy, which I don't know if you guys know a lot about Challenge Rift, but getting to 150 without an impossible trait is crazy. That's really good. So next up they have is Madara. Madara is really, really good because he has a very, very cheap full AoE, which is really good for proccing Mangekyo Sharingan, which is the absolute meta right now. CR meta is all about who can abuse Mangekyo the best, and Madara is probably the best at it. The only reason Nonomy has some variance there is because our value there, because he's so cheap. Nonomy is insanely cheap for what he offers. But Madara, in terms of full AoE, I believe he has the cheapest full AoE in the game, making it so he's able to absolutely just abuse the Mangekyo Sharingan. So yeah, I see why they did that. I fully agreed with their Challenge Rift list. I fully agree with everything they put up there. I think that's fantastic. I think they did a good job with that. So next up is Meta Infinite, Sung Jin Woo at number 1. If you're surprised by this, then you have not been paying attention. Sung Jin Woo is absolutely busted. There is an argument for Sung Jin Woo being moved to meta overall with Broly, but I feel like he needs the scaling to actually be really, 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 really good. So if you're like getting into a term of who's better, then yeah, I think Broly does beat out, my bad for pulling the microphone, I don't know if that made a noise. But I do think Broly does beat out Sung Jin Woo just ever so slightly. Let me make sure I didn't mess nothing up. So I do think he beats out Sung Jin Woo ever so slightly in terms of just in terms of damage. Or in short content, that is. Sung Jin Woo's definitely better in infinites. So next up is Mob. Mob has infinite scaling. That's the only reason I can see them putting up here. Because I'm going to be honest, Mob is doo-doo buns. Mob is not good. So the only reason I can see them putting him as second best is the infinite scaling, which I'm going to be honest, the second the buff reworks come through and you cannot push so far in infinites, Mob is falling down a cliff. Mob is going to be from Meta Infinite to please, dear God, buff this unit. So, yeah, I can see why they put him as second best, because you can get so far in Infinites right now currently with Sung Jin Woo that Mob is allowed to scale up like crazy. The next one is Toji. This one I kind of disagree with. I think Toji's better in Challenge Rift, but I can get where they're coming from because in Infinites you have plenty of time to actually set up for him, which makes sense because you do need a lot of setup to make Toji actually function. You do need Toto set up, you do need all this, you need Nami set up, you need all these things set up to let him start hitting his exponential values with crit damage and be able to do some really, really crazy work. So I can see Toji there. And then last is Rimuru in terms of Meta Infinite. Rimuru is just an absolute beast of a unit, but the thing is just like he power crept Sakura, Sung Jin Woo power crept him. So yeah, that's interesting. So yeah, Rimuru is an infinite. This is the issue with infinite units. Is why I don't like infinite units. Is there's always going to be something else to power creep something else, right? In terms of infinite scaling and damage and stuff like that. So nothing's going to stay meta forever. Like even Guts isn't going to stay Challenge with meta forever. Nothing's going to do that. It's not the way it should work. It should be gradual power creep, but just nothing super insane, right? So yeah, I think they've done a good job so far at power creep. The only issue is the outlier is Broly kind of moved the game forward a lot whenever he first came out, and everything's been kind of like trying to play catch up with Broly, which isn't good. That to me is not a good thing. So yeah, that's kind of funny. But next up, they have meta support Sakura as the best support in the game. Yeah, I've been saying it since the game came out that Sakura is the best support in the game. I'm glad that other people agree with that. Next up is Shinobu as second best. After a lot of playtesting, I agree. Shinobu, just her ability, triple stack her buff. She's expensive, but dear God, is it worth it because she's just so good. Nami, this one is really dependent on your team. Nami is either really, really, really good for you or just awful because she messes with ranges and she can mess stuff up. I personally don't like using Nami because if you mess the range up once in Challenge Rift, you just lose the stage. So you can be like, just get better 5-head, just don't mess the range up. But if you mess the range up and it touches your supports and then your supports buff the wrong target and then Guts just loses because you lost that, it's just like, there's too many working things for me to comfortably use Nami on my Guts team whenever I have all my other buffs set up. I do use Nami for early on though, to get that extra range so I can double Nami stack and just like Guts' really, really high damage takeover. But yeah, next up is Geto. Geto, I get why he's up here. He's a really, really good support. I've been saying it. He's a fantastic support. He buffs as well as he has the longest CC in the game, which is perfect for if there's like a big chonker coming down the line into Guts and you need to stop them. Yeah, he's really, really good. Next up is Toto. Toto is the premier crit damage buffer. He did get a weird change where he got slightly nerfed, but they didn't nerf him. So I'm guessing something with the code happened to where Toto now gives a little bit less crit damage. And lastly is Steve. Steve has the highest attack buff in the game. Attack is always good. Big number, hit harder. Very, very good. Next up is Bulma with meta farms. After Bulma, you can put Sanji, but I'm gonna be real. Sanji's kind of fallen off a cliff. He's not very worth it to use. So yeah, I kind of agree with not putting Sanji there at all because at the further up you get and the better you get your Bulma, you just outgrow Sanji. You just don't need him anymore. So at S rank, the very first one of S rank is Choi. I agree with this. I think Choi is like really close to being really, really good. It's just I feel like his bottom path is just slightly too expensive. And I do mean slightly. I mean like 500 gold. I mean it's like right there. And then he becomes a really good Challenge Rift unit just right now. I think he's in a rough spot. Next up is Time Maid. Now here's where the very first time I'm going to disagree with them. I think Time Maid should get moved up to meta support. Time Maid now is so cheap to get through her top path, and her top path does so much. I think they should reevaluate where they have her at because I do think she's a very, very valid support. Next up is Whitebeard. Whitebeard is really similar to Choi in the fact that he just costs too much to get to his point of power to be useful. He suffers greatly from that. It really does suck. Next up is Yuta. Yuta is pretty versatile. He can be used as a damage R support. I agree with the placement in S tier. After using him a bunch, while you put him on double Hawkeye and run him as a support, he's extremely valuable like that because you get the constant stun for less than 1,000 gold. It's really, really damn good. Actually, it might be a little bit more than 1,000 gold considering placement, but whatever. You get that stun for around 1,000 gold on a massive AOE. It's really good. It's super good. I'd probably move him up to meta support as well. But outside of that, he can be used as a damage also, which, it's kind of like whatever. Next up is Gojo. I'm gonna be real. Gojo's messed up by his lines. I don't think Gojo is going to be meta anywhere right now. I think he got helped out by the buff, but damage was never his issue. It's just his lines just suck. A tier, Zoro at the top of A tier. I actually think Zoro should go to CR meta personally, because how far I think Zoro should get moved up to here because of how far you can get with just Zoro. You get a double Hawkeye Zoro, and just like Nonomy, he carries you really, really far through Challenge Rift. I believe he can carry up to Challenge Rift 140. You can get with just a double Hawkeye Zoro. So yeah. Next up is Byakuya. Byakuya is really just too expensive to be used anywhere. So that's something to really just think about. I don't think Byakuya is going... I think Byakuya is just fine in A tier. Next up is Sakuna. Now, a lot of people are going to be like, I wonder if Valk said Sakuna's OP, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I was wrong. Sakuna's ass. Sakuna's really, really bad. That's just all there is to it. I did everything I could to make that unit work. I invested a ton of resources into him. I have him on CEO. I have him on everything. He's just bad. That's all there is to it. Sakuna's just really bad. Rengoku, this is pre-buff or post-buff? I think this is pre-buff. Post-buff, I think, can get moved up to Rage/CR meta. Once again, if I had to move stuff around, I would move Zoro here, like behind Madara, and then Rengoku behind Zoro. And that's where I think that Rengoku can be at now, because Rengoku, because of his buffs, I do believe he's actually usable in Challenge Rift. I think he can get up to a high enough attack stat to where he's actually usable. Next up is Vader. Vader here's A tier. Now, Vader, I actually want to move up as well. So you guys remember how I put Zoro here and how I put Rengoku here? Well, I want to take Vader, right? I want to move Vader right here in front of Madara. That's where I would put Vader. Now, you guys might be thinking I'm crazy, because I am. But I'm not, because Vader is really, really, really good. He's a 2 placement with the base attack of a 1 placement, and he has a really good top path now. I really believe Vader should be over Madara and right behind Nonomy. I still think Nonomy's like obviously behind Guts and Broly, the de facto king in terms of being cheap. But while Vader is expensive to place down and all that, he does have a very cheap full AoE that also stuns. So it's really good. It's really, really, really good. The only thing is you have to roll like Hawkeye and Hyperspeed on him. You have to roll like that combo specifically to be able to actively use it. So that is something to consider. All Might A tier support. Yeah, I agree with that. Next up is B tier, Batman, Jotaro. Jotaro, I agree. I think Jotaro's fallen off a cliff ever since like Yuta and all of them came. I think Jotaro doesn't have an identity anymore. I think you could even consider moving him down to C tier. I think Jotaro just kind of lost everything. So, Eren, then Dio, I agree with all this. I think this is fine. C tier, Harry Potter. Harry Potter's funny, but I don't think he's anything crazy. He is funny, though. Ichigo and Goku, yeah, down here, I agree. If anything, for Harry Potter, if anything, I would just move him up a tier. I move him C to B, but that's like so nitpicky, it's not even worth mentioning. D tier, Luke and Sneaky Clone. Now, this I don't agree with. I'm gonna be real. Especially after the latest buffs, I think Sneaky Clone can get moved to B tier, but Luke needs to be on his own tier. He's a special kind of bad, right? I don't think there's anybody as bad as Luke, and I don't think it's close at all. I think with Sneaky Clone, if you move Sneaky Clone up a tier, or up to B tier, and leave Luke all by himself, so you have Luke, Ichigo, Goku, Sneaky Clone, and then Harry, and then, yeah. So you have Ichigo, Goku in C tier, and then just Luke in D tier. I think you have a pretty good bottom 3 right there, because that's kind of where it is. Anyways, that's the tier list. I think they did a phenomenal job making the tier list. I agree with, like I said, like 95% of it or something like that. That's why I didn't feel like making my own, because I'm like, this one's good enough. This one's good. I agree with it. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. Catch you guys in the next one. Peace.